"James, help me." I rushed outside to find my disabled brother trapped behind our front gate, completely chained shut with industrial padlocks. "I can't miss this appointment," Michael pleaded, his face contorted in pain. His medication was wearing off, and the medical center was calling my phone. The bright orange HOA violation notice fluttered in the breeze, with Karen's smug signature at the bottom. She'd finally done it. After months of harassment over our unapproved wheelchair-accessible gate, our power-hungry HOA president had physically imprisoned my disabled brother. What she couldn't possibly know was that my uncle, the county sheriff, with jurisdiction over our entire neighborhood, was about to become involved. Michael had moved in after a construction accident left him partially paralyzed. He relied on weekly pain management treatments just to function. Karen Williams had made it her mission to make our lives miserable from day one. "Rules are rules," she'd say at meetings, completely ignoring Michael's disability accommodations. I examined the heavy chains. This wasn't just HOA overreach. This was dangerous, possibly criminal. As I called the third locksmith who couldn't come immediately, I knew what I had to do. My hand trembled as I dialed my uncle's number. Karen had no idea what she'd just started. Our troubles with Karen began 3 months earlier. Michael had just moved in, still adjusting to life in a wheelchair. I submitted paperwork to modify our front gate, a simple request to widen it for wheelchair access. 2 weeks later, I received my first violation notice, application denied, aesthetic inconsistency. I appealed immediately, citing Michael's medical needs. Karen called me personally the next day. "Mr. Miller, while we sympathize with your brother's situation, we can't have the neighborhood looking different." The way she said different made it sound like a disease. "Perhaps your brother would be more comfortable in an assisted living facility." I was speechless. Against her wishes, I installed the gate anyway. Michael needed it, and I was certain the Americans with Disabilities Act would protect us. That's when the harassment began. Weekly random inspections of our property. Violation notices for grass, half an inch too tall. $100 fines for leaving Michael's medical transport van in the driveway longer than 4 hours. Mrs. Rodriguez next door noticed it too. "She's targeting you," she told me one evening, glancing nervously toward Karen's house down the street. "Last summer, the Thompsons had an unapproved gate for weeks before anyone said anything. But you?" She was here with her measuring tape the day after installation. Michael tried to speak at the next HOA meeting. He waited patiently for the public comment period, then wheeled himself to the microphone. "I just want to explain why we need the modified gate," he began. Karen cut him off immediately. "The public comment period is for property owners only," she said coldly, despite knowing I had added Michael to the deed. The meeting erupted in whispers. Mr. Chen, who'd lived in the neighborhood for 20 years, stood up. "This is wrong, Karen. Let him speak." Karen threatened to have him removed, her hand hovering over her phone as if ready to call security. Mr. Chen sat down, but the damage was done. People were starting to see what we were dealing with. That weekend, 3 neighbors privately approached us with their own Karen stories. Mrs. Peterson had been fined $1,000 for installing a temporary ramp when her mother visited. Mr. Gonzalez received threatening letters about his lawn while deployed overseas. Even board member Doug confided that he was scared to oppose her, saying, "She knows things about everyone. She keeps files." Michael's health was suffering from the stress. His physical therapist noticed his progress slowing. "Whatever's happening at home needs to stop," she warned me. "His recovery depends on a stable, stress-free environment." But Karen was relentless. Then came the anonymous note in our mailbox. "Karen was seen photographing your house at 5:30 a.m. yesterday. Watch your back." The next day, we received a certified letter listing 12 violations, all suddenly discovered totaling $2,750 in fines. Most disturbing was the final line. Continued non-compliance will result in more severe enforcement actions. I installed security cameras that night. The footage showed Karen walking our property line at dawn, meticulously documenting every possible violation with her phone. In one clip, she actually measured the width of our gate, smiling as she wrote something in her notebook. When I confronted her with the footage at the next HOA meeting, she didn't even flinch. Board members are authorized to conduct inspections at any time, she stated, though I later learned this wasn't true. Perhaps if you spent more time following the rules instead of spying on board members, you wouldn't be in this situation. As I drove home that night, Karen's white SUV followed uncomfortably close behind me all the way to my driveway. She parked across the street, watching as Michael and I entered our home. The message was clear. She wasn't backing down. The final escalation came when Michael's weekly pain management appointment was scheduled. These treatments were essential, the only thing keeping his chronic pain manageable. The night before, I overheard Karen telling another board member outside our window, "Sometimes people need to learn lessons the hard way." I didn't know what she meant until the next morning, when we discovered our front gate wrapped in heavy chains. The morning sun illuminated the heavy chains wrapped around our gate. Michael sat helplessly in his wheelchair, his medication bag clutched tightly. "James, what do we do?" His voice trembled. I examined the padlock. Industrial grade. Impossible to break with household tools. Attached was an orange notice. Violation, unapproved gate modifications. Fine, $750. Gate will remain secured until homeowner compliance is achieved. Karen's elaborate signature flourished at the bottom. I called the HOA emergency line immediately. Karen answered, her voice crisp and professional. "Sunny Pines HOA, Karen speaking. You've chained our gate shut. My brother has a medical appointment he needs to get to right now." My hands were shaking with anger. "Mr. Miller, that gate was installed without proper approval. The committee explicitly rejected your application." Her tone was almost pleased. "That's a lie. I have the approval documentation. This is a medical necessity." Her laugh was short and dismissive. "The ADA doesn't supersede our HOA covenant that you signed. Rules are rules, Mr. Miller." I looked at Michael, whose face was growing paler by the minute as his pain medication wore off. "This is an emergency situation. My brother needs medical attention. Perhaps you should have thought about emergencies before installing unapproved modifications. The chains remain until the violation is addressed." She hung up. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at her fence. "I saw what that horrible woman did this morning, around 6 a.m. She came herself in that fancy white SUV, wrapped those chains herself. She was taking pictures, looking happy about it. I tried bolt cutters from the garage, but they weren't strong enough. I called 3 locksmiths. None could come immediately." Michael's hands were now trembling from pain, his appointment just 30 minutes away. That's when I realized there was only one person who could help us now. I'd been avoiding involving him in our HOA troubles, not wanting to mix family with these petty disputes, but this wasn't petty anymore. This was dangerous. I dialed the number. "Uncle Rob, it's James. We have an emergency situation here." As I explained what happened, his response was immediate and resolute. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't touch anything else." As I hung up, I knew everything was about to change. Karen had no idea who she was messing with or what she had just set in motion. Uncle Rob's Sheriff's Department SUV pulled up exactly 9 minutes later. He stepped out in full uniform, gold badge gleaming in the morning sun, his face hardening as he surveyed the chained gate. Michael was now visibly suffering, a sheen of sweat on his forehead as he fought through the pain. Uncle Rob examined the chains and the notice, taking pictures with his department phone. "This is illegal detention and potentially criminal negligence," he said, his voice low but sharp. With department-issued bolt cutters, he made quick work of the chains. Michael wheeled through immediately, relief washing over his face. "Get him to his appointment," Uncle Rob instructed. "I'll handle this from here." I hesitated, torn between getting Michael care and witnessing what would happen next. "Go," he insisted. "Michael's health comes first. This isn't over." During Michael's treatment, my phone exploded with neighborhood chat notifications. Sheriff's vehicles were parked outside both Karen's house and the HOA office. Officers were interviewing Karen on her front lawn. Mrs. Rodriguez texted that Karen was turning redder than my prized tomatoes as deputies reviewed documents on her porch. When we returned home, Uncle Rob was waiting in our driveway. His expression mixed professional determination with personal outrage. "I've opened an official investigation," he said once we were inside. "What she did wasn't just an HOA violation. It was potentially criminal. Blocking someone's emergency exit, preventing access to medical care, discrimination against a disabled person. The list goes on." Then came the revelation that stunned me. This isn't the first complaint against Karen Williams. We've received multiple reports over the past year. Harassment, selective enforcement, even allegations of stealing delivered packages to inspect them for HOA violations. Nobody filed formal charges because they feared retaliation. He shook his head. People shouldn't have to live in fear in their own neighborhoods. Our doorbell rang at 6 p.m. that evening. Karen Williams stood on our porch, her perfect blazer wrinkled, her flawless hair disheveled. The confidence that usually radiated from her was replaced by uncertainty. "Mr. Miller," she began, her voice lacking its usual sharpness, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about your gate situation." Before I could respond, Uncle Rob appeared behind me. "Ms. Williams, I don't believe you should be here right now, approaching potential victims during an active investigation. Could be considered witness intimidation." Karen's eyes widened as she took in Uncle Rob's uniform and sheriff's badge. I didn't realize," she stammered. "I'm just trying to resolve a simple HOA matter. Chaining in a disabled resident and preventing access to medical care goes well beyond HOA matters, ma'am." Uncle Rob's expression remained professionally neutral, but his eyes were steel. Karen's composure cracked completely. "It was just about following the rules. The gate doesn't match community standards. I didn't know he had a medical appointment today." "Were you aware Mr. Miller's brother is disabled and needs wheelchair access?" Uncle Rob asked. Karen nodded reluctantly. "And you personally installed those chains this morning, correct?" Another nod. "Then I suggest you consult with an attorney immediately, Ms. Williams. My officers will be in touch." As Karen turned to leave, Michael wheeled himself to the door. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I did try to explain my medical needs at the last 3 HOA meetings. You said aesthetic standards couldn't be compromised for individual preferences." Karen couldn't meet his eyes as she hurried back to her car. 3 days later, an emergency community meeting was called. The HOA boardroom was packed beyond capacity, residents standing along walls and spilling into hallways. Karen was noticeably absent. The remaining board members looked uncomfortable, facing the crowd of residents, many sharing their HOA experiences for the first time. Uncle Rob attended too, not as sheriff but as family, though his presence clearly made the board nervous. The chair, Doug, cleared his throat before addressing everyone. "In light of recent events and concerns, the board has accepted Karen Williams's resignation as HOA president, effective immediately." A ripple of whispers spread through the room. "Furthermore, we're proposing a complete review of all HOA policies. with specific focus on accommodations for residents with disabilities and hardships. One elderly woman stood up, her voice shaking. "I've been afraid to plant flowers for 3 years because Karen said they were the wrong color. Am I allowed to garden again?" The question might have seemed silly elsewhere, but the room fell silent, awaiting the answer. Doug nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Abernathy, plant whatever flowers you'd like. We're suspending all purely aesthetic regulations pending review." The meeting lasted hours as neighbors shared experiences and suggestions. Michael, who rarely spoke publicly due to discomfort with attention, summoned courage to address the room. "Rules matter," he said quietly, "but so does humanity. I hope we can create a community that remembers both." His simple words brought several people to tears, including board members who had supported Karen's rigid enforcement for years. 2 weeks later, formal notices appeared in all mailboxes. Karen Williams was facing multiple charges, including violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, illegal detention, and abuse of power. The investigation had expanded beyond our incident, revealing a pattern of selective enforcement targeting vulnerable residents. The district attorney was now reviewing years of HOA records for evidence of discrimination. Our community transformed almost overnight. Mrs. Abernathy planted a rainbow of flowers. The Rodriguez family built a basketball hoop for their children. Mr. Chen painted his door bright red to honor his cultural heritage. Small changes that represented enormous freedom after Karen's reign of terror. The most surprising change came a month later when Karen's house went up for sale. The day her moving truck arrived, I was helping Michael with therapy exercises in our front yard. Karen walked over looking nothing like the intimidating HOA president we'd known. "I wanted to apologize," she said, eyes fixed near our gate. "I got carried away with the rules and forgot why communities exist." Michael, always more gracious than me, wheeled forward. "I hope you find happiness in your new place." She nodded, tears unexpectedly welling, before hurrying back to her truck. 6 months have passed. Our HOA still exists, but it's unrecognizable from Karen's era. The new board, including Michael as accessibility advisor, focuses on community needs rather than control. Property values haven't plummeted as Karen feared. They've increased as word spread about our welcoming neighborhood. Uncle Rob joins our expanded Sunday dinners that now include neighbors who've become friends. The chains that once imprisoned us have been repurposed into a community art installation at the entrance to our neighborhood, a reminder that sometimes standing up to those who abuse power isn't just right. It's necessary. As Michael put it at our last community picnic, sometimes chains don't just restrict people, they connect them. It depends on whether you're using them to imprison or to build something stronger together.